Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment of Taoism Explained. We are up to the 33rd chapter now, which is translated as the virtue of discrimination, or discriminating between attributes. So, as usual, I'll read 3 different translations and then talk a little bit about what I take it to mean in the present moment. The first translation reads, "He who knows other men is discerning. He who knows himself is intelligent. He who overcomes others is strong. He who overcomes himself is mighty. He who is satisfied with his lot is rich. He who goes on acting with energy has a firm will. He who does not fail in the requirements of his position continues long. He who dies and yet does not perish has longevity." The second translation. "One who knows others is clever, but one who knows himself is enlightened. One who conquers others is powerful, but one who conquers himself is mighty. One who knows contentment is rich, and one who pushes with vigor has will. One who loses not his place endures. One who may die but will not perish has life everlasting." And the final translation. "He who knows others is intelligent. He who understands himself is enlightened. He who is able to conquer others has force, but he who is able to control himself is mighty. He who appreciates contentment is wealthy. He who dares to act has nerve. If he can maintain his position, he will endure, but he who dying does not perish is immortal." So, understanding other people can be seen as clever or intelligent, while understanding oneself can be seen as wise or enlightened. Making others submit to your own will requires force, while making the self submit requires a strong will. If we know that we already have enough, we will be wealthy beyond measure, and if we are adapted to our environment, we can continue on. If we practice the art of dying, we can remain eternally present. This chapter seems to be very related to some of my other current areas of study, whether the parallel actually exists or if I'm just making a connection where there isn't one. But in any case, I am very much reminded here of the Stoic philosophy. Being able to discriminate, and that pesky word discriminate that has gone on to take a largely negative connotation these days, is really just a neutral word. One must discriminate in a positive sense on a constant basis, such as discriminating whether or not to get out of bed and hop in the shower before work, or to discriminate between having a glazed donut or a bowl of oatmeal and some protein powder for breakfast. Discrimination is a major part of our lives that allows us to consciously make decisions in the present moment that can both be informed by our recollection of past choices while also having an impact on our future. Like if we're going to have a sugar crash in a few hours after choosing that donut, or if our belly is going to be satisfied through the morning until lunchtime. When it is mentioned in the first line that knowing others is clever or intelligent, I would take this to mean that understanding other people is a good thing to strive for as a baseline. We are all vastly different beings with our own philosophies, values, pasts, traits, and desires. So by first understanding other people, we can learn to deal with them more effectively and accept them as individuals. On top of this, knowing the self intimately can bring deeper awareness and self-realization. This could mean we realize that our thoughts and feelings are not our own, and that we ought not define ourselves by them. While we may think we know who we are, do we really? Using force to overcome others is a feat of strength that requires force. But making our false sense of self submit requires a strong will. In order for us to strengthen this will, we try to make little changes in our habits on a day-to-day basis for the rest of our lives. We will never be perfect, but we become more resilient and calm each time an obstacle is placed before us. We pause before we act, frame the situation properly in our minds, and make a calculated move that requires the least amount of force and brings us the least amount of emotional distress at the same time. Knowing that we already have enough is to be truly wealthy. We've all heard some form of this a million times before, and when we're in a certain mood, we may think that it's just something that bored rich dudes say because they can't remember what it was like to struggle. But on the contrary, especially in modernity, this line is truer than ever, especially if you find yourself dwelling in the Western world. Knowing that you have enough can mean wildly different things to different people. But to use a personal example, knowing that I have indoor plumbing, electricity, climate-controlled housing, a climate-controlled workplace, and plenty of food to keep myself alive, we can easily take these things for granted and find ways to complain about minor inconvenience and things that may seem rather trivial when we take a step back. Being adapted to our environment is important as well, and learning to appreciate our current circumstances rather than constantly hoping for something else can increase our happiness and bring about a calm mind state. While we shouldn't ignore things that do need changing or fixing, oftentimes we find ourselves complaining about something that, again, we take for granted. The kitchen countertops and outdated hardwood floors may not be the most stylish on the market, but in other parts of the world, a dwelling may consist of dirt floors and makeshift tables. For most of human history, the things we now enjoy as a given were not even dreamt of, even by the richest of royalty. So if we can turn our attention to visualizing how our situations could be much worse than they actually are, not by hoping for our situations to worsen or to dwell on it for a lengthy period of time, but to just keep ourselves in check so we can continue to improve our resilience and build gratitude for the things we have and for the lives we currently are actually living, regardless of the things that irritate us and bring us emotional distress. And finally, knowing that we will all eventually die at the end is an uncomfortable truth that we all must confront at some point. The earlier, the better, I like to think. If we are able to confront our demise with strength and curiosity, rather than fear and uncertainty, we will keep our dignity intact. A good way for us to practice this in real life is to sort of randomly throughout the day act as if you are doing whatever it is that you're doing for the very last time. So if you're at work, maybe sweeping up the floor at the end of your shift, sweep the floor as if it's the last time you'll ever be sweeping that floor. If you're kissing your spouse goodnight, kiss them as if it's your final kiss. One other thought that I like to keep in mind regarding death, especially when we are described as immortal, as in this chapter, is the same as I mentioned at the beginning. We are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, and we are not simply a body and a brain. Some may think that we are a spirit or soul inhabiting a body, and that is all fine and well, but more specifically, I tend to think that we are the Tao itself, a tiny, point of attention that allows the universe to experience itself subjectively from many different viewpoints. Once a body dies, it returns to where it came, back to the earth, and the show goes on forever and ever. Thanks for listening as always. Until next time.